everyone, welcome back to the Just Justine Time Podcast, or JJ Time for easier saying. If you guys don't know who I am Justine, or also known as Kitty Cat. You may know me around the gaming scene. Is your day going good? Bad? Well, no matter what, I hope you're getting through it. How have you guys been since last episode? I know I've been awesome, other than we got our first snowfall of the year in October. Isn't that crazy? I decided to dress comfy today. I'm wearing a nice little knitted dress as well as some cute knee-high socks that are also knitted. So I can say that I am very well prepared for the cold weather that is to come. But with that being said, today we will be talking about depression and mental illness and just how depression as a whole can affect someone's daily life. We're going to go about all the different types of depression. We're going to talk about the history of it. We're going to talk about the causes, treatments, and I know that I'm going to talk about a little bit of my experiences throughout this podcast. So where should we start? I think we should start with the history of depression and where it comes from. So the earliest medical history that I could find on depression, it dates back to the Greek. Father of medicine is what it's called. And he kind of said that it was an imbalance and it related to the four humors of the body. The theory was that there was too much black bile, and if there was too much black bile in your body, you were known as depressed or bad. So their thing was to overcome depression. They recommended rebalancing body systems using relaxation and healthy living strategies, as well as they also did use bloodletting and leeches. And if you guys don't know what bloodletting is, they did that during the Black Plague. They thought that if you drained your own blood, that you would somehow get rid of the disease. As for leeches, as you know, leeches suck out blood. So they would also try and do that. And basically they use bloodletting and leeches for the physical symptoms of depression. Also, we got a cute little cat break. Hello, Gimbim. How's it going? Are you doing all right? Look at the kitty of the hour. You doing so nice? Do you want to talk about depression? She has a lot of words, a lot of strong words about depression. So thank you for your input. Over time, depression is now treated with psychoactive drugs, and a lot of you guys know them as antidepressants. There is common ones like Lexapro, Zoloft, etc. But I'll get to the treatments later. There is many different types of depression. There is, I'm pretty sure, even when I was doing a little bit of more research, there's some new recent ones that I didn't even learn in university, so I'll definitely go over them. But one of the most common one, or what most people have and talk about, is major depression. Major depression is also known as unipolar depression. It basically means that you experience symptoms most of the day or every single day, and these symptoms can be like sadness, lack of concentration, feeling hopelessness, and it just, basically you are very sad and can barely get out of bed type of thing. And the way to be diagnosed with major depression is that it has to happen. It can last weeks or months, and I think in the DSM-5 it has to be going on for 2 weeks or more in order to be considered major depression. And I think if it goes on for a month or 6 weeks more, it is known as chronic major depression. And those are people who, you may yourself have experienced this, where you go months and months without just not taking care of yourself just because you're so depressed that you can't do your daily tasks, which, trust me, I've been there. Almost everyone in my family has been there. You have at least been there once. And I'll get into that a little bit later of how, even though you can experience these symptoms, it doesn't technically mean you have depression. Actually, let's get into it now. Basically, in the DSM-5, if you are not depressed for 4 weeks or more, you may actually have something different, or you may not have depression at all. There is bipolar that is on the list that is related to depression, and there's also a type of sadness, it's called extreme sadness, that people can experience, and most of the time a lot of people can get confused with sad days or if they're actually depressed. And that's why the media likes to say they're so depressed, but I will get on with that later. So again, this leads into the second type of depression. This is persistent depression or chronic depression. It is exactly the same thing other than you experience it for longer bouts of time. To get chronic depression or persistent, you do need to have it for 2 years or more, but you need to have bouts of 6 months at a time. Like, you can feel okay in certain times of the year. That's also another type of depression, but you can feel good, but it's basically the overlying thing that you have depression for 2 years or more. And usually people who have chronic depression, they have the inability to feel joy. They honestly have a difficult time living. This is cases where you see like people coming in with very matted hair or like rotting teeth, because when you have chronic depression, it is very hard to even deal with your basic needs, and there's totally no shame as long as you're trying and hopefully one day can get active help. It's totally okay to be at your lowest. I was at my lowest at one point, and it turns out I didn't even have depression, even though that is what I actually thought I had, was just major depression. It turns out I have something else, but like I said, I'll say it in the list of things. So the next type of depression is called manic depression, and a lot of people get this confused with bipolar. People get manic depression confused with bipolar, because bipolar does come with mania. We will get into that in the next couple episodes, but there is such thing as mania depression, and it is basically where you feel feelings of euphoria and you are erratic. So it involves where you feel hypermania and happiness, reduced sleep, and you feel superior. And manic depression does correlate with bipolar, as it is your high, because with bipolar there's highs and lows, but there is such thing called manic depression, which means you just feel like you're on top of the world, and usually for about a week or two you get all of your chores done in your house, and you bake and cook and go for walks, go on extreme shopping sprees, and that's solely because there is a dip, or there's a high in your depression. So it definitely makes you feel like you're on top of the world and no one can stop you. But like I said, in the next couple episodes, we will talk more about bipolar and how depression and anxiety is linked to that. The next type of depression is depression psychosis. And what depression psychosis is it's where you start seeing delusions and hearing voices. Again, people get this confused with schizophrenia, but it's not actually schizophrenia. It's paired with major depression. Basically, yeah, there is a rare symptom that you can get where you get depressive psychosis and you start seeing and hearing things that aren't actually there. It could also mean the first step to schizophrenia, but you would need to get a psychologist to diagnose that to make sure that, is it schizophrenia, or are you just hearing voices from the isolation that you are doing to yourself. The next one is prenatal depression. This only affects women. And if there's any fathers out there, you may have had to experience it with your wife or your significant other. It is basically when it's weeks leading up to the birth, or it can be 4 weeks after the birth. It is where parents and mothers go into a postpartum depression, and it's feeling of dread. They feel like their baby's gonna die every second, and basically this is all due to the hormones in the brain, because when you are pregnant, you are getting pumped with progesterone and estrogen, and once the baby comes out, your hormones are trying to fall back to the baseline level. I'm pretty sure it's called the hormonal basal rate or something like that. It's like your basal rate, which basically means we all have like an equilibrium. We all have a baseline. So whenever you're feeling excited, you're over the baseline. If you're really sad, you're under your baseline, and your brain is constantly trying to bring you back to that normal feeling, whatever your normal might be. But with postpartum depression, of course, if you're getting pumped with a bunch of hormones and then your baby comes out and you no longer need those hormones, of course you're going to have a huge dip in hormones. And sadly, that does affect everyone, and especially the mother, because you are very depressed for a very long time. And there has been instances where mothers will actually kill their children due to postpartum depression, because they have extreme worry or like they even have thoughts of harming themselves or their baby. There is such thing as postpartum psychosis, and it is similar to depression other than there is delusions. This is where you hear like mothers that God is speaking to them. If any of you guys know the familiar game The Binding of Isaac, The Binding of Isaac actually touches on postpartum psychosis a little bit. That's not the whole story, but it's essentially she thinks God is speaking to her, when in reality she's kind of just a little out of there for a moment. But yeah, with postpartum psychosis, that's where you start hearing the voices to, kill your baby, kill this. I do know there was a story a long time ago of a woman who had postpartum psychosis, and she had a mental break, and she actually drove all 3 of her kids into the ocean. Luckily, they were all saved. The mother did drown, but the babies got out alive, and the toddlers. And it really sucks that a lot of mothers go through this, because I don't think there's much help, especially with like if you go into marital leave. When I was in my sociology class, it turns out that there's such thing called worker bias, and it can really affect people who take sick days and marital leave. And what it basically is of course, when you're pregnant, you are allowed to go, I think it's up to 9 weeks of marital leave, because of course, or actually, I think it's a lot more. I'm not a mother. I don't know how much time you get marital leave, but I do know that you do get a lot of marital leave, because you're trying to take care of your baby. But what it is that a lot of people actually don't like taking marital leave or family leaves, because it is a thing in sociology that your coworkers will look down on you, whether or not you're a mother or not. Like, male coworkers will end up resenting you, because it's like, why do you get like 2 months of paid leave and I don't? And so that portrays to the mother or to whoever's taking off the vacation, and it makes them not want to do that because they don't want to be looked down at their job. And even employers will try and discourage marital leave and sick days, because they're like, you have to be here as like soon as you're good to go, and like it's frowned upon. And I truly think that's why a lot of mothers get postpartum depression or psychosis, because there's no help. It's kind of just like shunned off, like, oh, you just popped out a baby, like that's normal. Like, yeah, it is normal, but it takes a long time to like get better. Like, you just popped open a baby, you know what I mean? Like, I really wish there was more mental care for that. But regardless, there's also such thing as a PMDD. It's also known as premenstrual dysphoric disorder. This only, again, affects girls, and it affects girls who are experiencing their period. If you are on your period, you will usually experience this 2 weeks leading up to your period, or it can happen 2 weeks after. And it's not just like regular PMS. Any guys who are watching know it's not just, oh, my girlfriend gets moody during that time, so I can't talk to her. It's not like that. The difference between premenstrual system and postmenstrual dysphoric disorder is it's basically premenstrual, or PMS is where you get the hormone imbalance and you get more of a, a bitchy girlfriend. So it's not the same as just having a moody girlfriend. With that being said, premenstrual dysphoric disorder it's actually where you get feelings of like you're not even yourself. You feel disconnected with the world, and you feel like withdrawing from everyone. So people who have dysphoric disorder either can change their mood completely, and they're more harsh. So instead of just being a moody girlfriend, you're more like the harsh, like, get the F away from me type of girlfriend. If you guys don't know, Charlie D'Amelio, her sister is Dixie D'Amelio. She just got diagnosed with it, and it explains why, if you do watch her show, it explains why she was feeling very down and moody lately. But a lot of people who have dysphoric disorder, basically, they feel like they're not them. They don't feel like themselves, and they tend to push people away and isolate. So, if your daughter or significant other is showing signs of that, maybe you should go get it checked out, because it's better to know if you have just regular PMS or dysphoric disorder, because the thing with dysphoric disorder, you can actually get medicated for it. So yeah, it kind of seems like women have it pretty hard when it comes to certain hormonal depression disorders. But if you want to hear a fun fact, if you guys think that women are the only culprits for getting hormonal disorders, any men who are listening right now, you will be sad to hear that once men hit their midlife, they actually have a major increase of getting depression, and that is solely because your testosterone levels drop once you turn 30 to 50. So you guys better watch out. If you're hitting your midlife crisis pretty soon, it could be because you're dropping testosterone. So maybe go talk to your doctor about that. The last type of depression, it's actually something that my grandma has, and I experience bouts of it, but I think I'm doing a lot better treating it, and that is seasonal affective disorder. And what that is, it's also known as seasonal depression, and what that is, and it usually happens in places where winter happens or the sun doesn't shine as much. I'm pretty sure there's a little place next to the equator that for 6 months of the time will shine light, and 6 months it will be complete darkness for day and night. I can't imagine seasonal depression is probably really big there during the night months, but what it basically is to countries that get winter, the sun doesn't shine as much, and of course the body does need vitamin D, and vitamin D is actually known as like the happy vitamin, because without vitamin D you will get depression more likely. So with my grandma, so we used to live in Saskatchewan, and we actually moved to BC for about 2 years, and if you've never lived in BC before, you'll know that it's usually a gamble every year. You'll either get the sun will shine the whole winter, or the sun will never shine and it'll just be overcast the whole winter, and most of the time it was overcasted, which is not fun, because with my grandma, she would get very depressed, like couldn't even get out of bed during winter, but as soon as spring and summer came, she was like completely fine. It was really miraculous, because at the time I didn't know what seasonal affective disorder was, and it's so interesting that just not getting sunlight can make you depressed. So yeah, and basically you have to try and get more vitamin D into your system. That's how I've counteracted mine. I still get more depressed during winter, of course, but I kind of load myself up with pills and vitamins. Not like prescription all over the counter. I use vitamin D pills, I take a vitamin B6 supplement, and I also take L-thymine, but L-thymine is nothing to do with depression or anything. L-thymine is more just of a calming, it's a natural calming agent which makes you not freak out a lot. So if you have anxiety or ADHD, I would recommend maybe going on Amazon and trying L-thymine, because it's natural, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but for me it's doing a pretty good job. But those were basically all of the different depressions that you can get. I know, it's like pull out of a hat and pick which one you want, right? There is kind of another depression, but it's more of a case study or more of a isolated situations, and it's basically called hospitalism. And what hospitalism is it can be seen in institutions where children don't receive the adequate care that they need. And as well as emotional care. If like daycares or most kids who grow up in a hospital, if they have like problems and stuff, if they do not get the emotional care that they need, they tend to become apathetic and withdrawn from everyone, even though they may be cared for physically. There was an experiment done in psychology, and it was done to 5 babies. This was back before World War II, before, experiments. There's no ethics and morals behind it, but there was an experiment done way back in the day where I think it was 5 to 10 babies. They were brand newborns that got taken away, like with consent by their parents, of course. I'm pretty sure there were adoption cases or like orphans. But what happened is they took these babies, like brand newly born, and all they did was care for their physical needs. They only, brushed their teeth, gave them food and water, and that's it. They didn't talk to them. They didn't give them any emotional support out of that care. And what ended up happening, and I'm pretty sure it was 7 out of 10 babies ended up dying and there was no physical cause why they just died. A lot of people chalked it up to sudden infant death syndrome, but even that didn't make sense because all of their needs were cared for. So it is suspected that due to the lack of emotional care as a child, they can just end up dying. And the other three, actually, they never really regained anything. They ended up kind of being like a feral child. If you don't know what a feral child is, it's where if children who barely get taken care of or, get raised in the wild and become feral, it's basically where they can be like 20 but have the mind of a 2-year-old. It's just they never developed properly, which really makes me like think about the social aspect of babies and caring for them, and like why is it if we're overpopulated, and I'm pretty sure there's like 200,000 new kids are put into the foster system every year. I'm pretty sure it's way more than that, but the internet likes to lie a little bit. It's really crazy how there's not any, do I get into this in this podcast? If we talk about the Roe v. Wade, if you guys don't know what that is, it is basically abortion laws were taken away in some certain states, and females are no longer allowed to go get abortions without being fined. And I am going to talk about it because I know I shouldn't really get my opinions in here, but if you are pro-life, I do respect your decision. I understand that you do not want to end a child's life. I don't want to end just any child's life. I totally agree that abortion shouldn't be used as birth control, but something that I do think is wrong is that if a 14-year-old sadly gets pregnant, whether with her boyfriend or with, someone who should be in prison, they are no longer, they are not allowed to abort the baby as long as it's healthy. And even if they go out of state to try and go to an abortion pro state, the doctor will request a pregnancy test before and after they come back. And if when they come back it is negative, they are legally allowed to investigate why you lost the baby. And if they find out that you went to an abortion clinic, you can be jailed for up to 10 years. So I couldn't imagine being a 14-year-old being jailed because you didn't want to be a mother. And going back to depression, can you imagine a 14-year-old getting postpartum depression? When you're 14, that is the most emotionally unstable where you are. From ages 12 to 16, you are the most emotionally unstable because that is where you get molded into the person you are. So I understand that there are teen moms and there are some great teen moms out there. I just don't think that, we should be pumping out babies when there's so many problems and it's not being adequately taken cared for. But going back to hospitalism, there was also another more common experiment done in psychology. So this was called the wired mother experiment. And actually Harlow did this experiment. He was a very famous psychologist growing up, and it was basically they would take a baby monkey and there would be two different surrogate mothers. There would be a mother that was soft and warm and wrapped in blankets. There was also a monkey that was completely made of wire, but they actually put the food, they would put the milk bottle with the wired monkey. And it turned out that the monkey would always choose the blanket-wrapped, soft surrogate mother, and they would only go to the wired monkey for food. And once they were done with the food, they'd go right back to the comforted surrogate mother. And it explained a lot to researchers that that is how much you need to be emotionally cared for, because even though you can get your basic needs, that's not what socially babies actually need, even in animals. That brings us to the different causes of depression and how you can get it even. And it's sad to say that it is mostly genetics. If your grandmother or grandfather, mother, father had depression, you are most likely going to get at least some form of depression. With that being said, it is said that most people in their lifetime, I think it's 1 in 3 people in their lifetime will experience a phase of depression. Even if you live a healthy life or are good, there's just, you ever lose your job, lose your house, death of a loved one, you are going to feel feelings of depression. But, most of the time it's just extreme sadness. But extreme sadness can develop into depression. And even just being alive, even if you don't have depression right now, another cause is changes in your neurotransmitters. You can go one day being fine, and the next day your brain's like, actually, I want to rewire, and boom, now you have depression. It really sucks how sudden it can come on. But it also can be from environment and lack of support. So if you grew up neglected or abused, you are more likely going to develop depression. If you're in a stressful situation right now, like if you got a promotion at your job and you're working late hours and you have no social or home life, you might get depression because environmental factors... Sorry, Guinness is just staring at me. Environmental factors can really affect you. So if you're starting to feel a little depressed, maybe think about what's going on in your life and see if you can reevaluate it. It is said that, so even though men are more likely to get depression later in life because of the drop of testosterone, it is also said that women are twice as likely to get depression over men, but some scientists and psychologists suspect that it's because men like to underreport, and even though if they do have depression, they like to think that they don't, and a lot of men do this, and if you have a significant other or a brother who gets angry all the time over the slightest little things but doesn't actually have anger issues, depression can be hidden under anger. So if you know someone who likes to punch walls or slam desks, it's most likely because they have depression. It's just depression can show in either sadness or anger, because it is common knowledge that anger and sadness is one and the same. If there's an angry person, they are most likely a sad person. And it's actually argued that if you are an angry person, you are just as emotional as someone who will cry over anything. So that's a food for thought right there. Men who usually experience depression in their teen years, like from ages 12 to 18, they don't actually have the typical depression where like, you're stuck in bed, you cry over anything. It's not typically like that. And most of the time, men who do have depression in their teen years, they tend to take more risk-taking behavior. They might display more anger, like I was talking about earlier. They may develop alcoholism, and they are just bigger risk taker. And I actually know someone who has struggled with depression, but their parents brought them up basically saying, well, men don't cry, men don't have feelings, you know, the whole stereotypical 60s way of raising your boy. And he has told me recently that he does have depression and that he experienced alcoholism, risk-taking, everything, and his reason why is that he didn't care if he died. And that is a symptom of depression where you feel like you do want to take your life. In his case, he basically said he would drink until he blacked out, he would jump off of buildings, like he would do everything crazy just because he didn't want to live. But he didn't want his friends to know, so instead of his friends like being worried for him, his friends cheered him on because, of course, you know in high school how doing dangerous stunts is cool, even though it's not, and go get some help. No, I've experienced my own risk-taking behavior, and it doesn't always have to mean depression. It's just that is a one case that I do know, and I do know a lot of people struggle with that. Even children can get depression. It's very low because you can't really tell if your child has depression until they get older, but from ages like 4 to 6, if your child is expressing low energy or is crying a lot or is super clingy to you, it could be a symptom or sign of depression. It doesn't always mean that. Like, I'm not saying that you can just automatically diagnose your kid like that, but if they're displaying signs, maybe again it's something to get checked out. But it is not usually able to be diagnosed until later age. I think like the youngest you can really get diagnosed is like 9, unless you're showing like really, really depressed symptoms. Yeah, so depression can also come in triggers. Like I was saying, there instead of you being depressed, you can actually just have bouts of extreme sadness. But I actually got diagnosed with this, and I'm going to talk about it. I got diagnosed with dependent personality disorder, and yes, we will talk about personality disorders coming up, but I got it confused for depression before I got treated. And what dependent personality disorder is it is basically that you take someone, whether it's your significant other, a family member, most of the time it is significant others, you see it pretty commonly, but it is basically where people who have it, they feel submissive or dependent to a person. I was really dependent on my boyfriend at the time, to a point where we ended up breaking up, and I did something very drastic. And I thought that I just had extreme depression. Like, I couldn't wake up without calling him. Like, I would cry to him all the time because anything in my life that was going wrong, I thought was like, he needed to know. And I couldn't even make my own decisions. Like, if I wanted to go out to eat or if I wanted to like sleep, I would always have to ask him and his permission, even though he was like, you do not have to do this, like, this is fine. And it usually comes from if you have an abusive relationship beforehand or an abusive childhood. Mine sadly was both. I've been in an abusive relationship as well as an abusive childhood. It really sucks. Not from my parents, don't, make sure to not say that. I got it from foster care and everything. But with that being said, I thought I had depression. Like, I would fail tests, and it turns out the reason why I would fail tests or something is because my boyfriend at the time didn't say good luck or say do good, and if I didn't have that like validation, I would just feel like it was the end of the world. It was also said that I had an adjustment disorder. And what adjustment disorder is, again, it is also confused for depression, but I had major adjustment disorder, and I still have it. It is something that is not curable other than thinking happy thoughts. And what adjustment disorder is the slightest stressor can feel like the end of the world. And then big stressors are literally the end of the world. So, like, if you're, like, let's say something minuscule happened where you missed your bus before work. In a situation like that, for me, I freak out and panic. And I'm like, I will start crying. It's really bad. It used to be a lot worse. Situations that I come across was if I did bad on a university test, I would cry for hours. I would think I was a failure. And adjustment disorder, those are some of the symptoms: feeling like a failure, not being able to control the situation. And when it comes to big losses, like if a family member dies, or in my case, if I got broken up with, it would feel like the end of the world. And people tend to do very harsh things. They will try and take their life. They will try and do anything to get someone back. I know I've never experienced a death in my life before, so I can't really relate to that. But I do know that relationships are similar to death. They say that if you get out of a long-term relationship, it is almost exactly the same grieving process as someone who just lost their partner or something like that. It's pretty interesting how different disorders or can be under the guise of depression. And something that's not talked about much is that depression is a symptom for a lot of disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar, multiple personality disorder. There's always depression that can be a symptom. It's not always, but it most likely is. Yeah, so another thing, depression nowadays is a lot more common, whether you want to argue that it was pushed under the rug with lobotomies, or if now it is becoming more prevalent. But like, why is that? Why is depression becoming more prevalent in today's society? And the thing with today's society is, if you guys don't know, our lovely iPhones, I got the iPhone 14, the purple one, and I will say, even though my podcast is not about marketing strategies and stuff, I only got this phone because it was purple. So I'm very easily influenced, and purple is my favorite color, and I would have not got the new phone because the only difference between the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 12 is the camera. That's the only difference, and everything else is the same, other than, oh yeah, you can customize your home screen. My bad. Like, but anyways, that's not the point. What is the point is that with phones nowadays, they are doing a better job fixing this, but blue light rays can cause depression, and not the light rays itself can, but blue light will affect your sleep. If you guys take melatonin to go to sleep, melatonin is a natural chemical that is made in the brain, and with blue light, it will interrupt your melatonin receptors, and it makes you go to sleep later. That's why if you're a gamer like me, you tend to go to sleep super late because you don't feel tired, and that's because of the blue light emitting from your computer screen. I do know Apple, and I'm pretty sure Samsung does it, that you can now get yellow light like near bedtime. Like if you have your bedtime set, you can see your screen goes yellow, and the reason why it goes yellow is to try and counteract that blue light and so that you can go to sleep. Also something that's interesting to think about, if you are a melatonin user, and if you're taking anything more than 2.5 milligrams, you are ruining your melatonin receptors, and you will become dependent on it if you take it for like more than a month too. I know I used to take melatonin every night for like 6 months, and I had to wean myself off of it because you physically can't sleep. The thing is that your melatonin in your body will make to no more than, I think it's like 3 milligrams a night. If you take anything more than 3 milligrams, basically your brain will try and hold on to the melatonin receptors and say, oh, we don't need to produce more because there's some coming in. And then it will completely stop making melatonin completely. This is what happens with drugs. If you are, let's say, a meth user or Adderall user or even weed or alcohol, any type of substance abuse, it can affect you like this. And it's basically where if you take, like, let's say, if you take coke, it is an upper. It will totally greatly increase your dopamine levels. What happens over time, and the reason why people get so dependent on it, is because you were trying to find that euphoria feeling. And the thing is with coke is that it blocks off dopamine receptors while pushing in a lot of dopamine. So again, what happens is if you are a chronic user, once you stop taking it, you will no longer be able to feel happiness because your dopamine receptors are shut off, and you have to wait until there is no dopamine left in your body for you to actually feel good again. I actually had this happen to me. I took a specific substance drug. I don't want to get into it, but I'm kidding. I took a specific substance drug when I was younger, and I only took it once. I will say I took a lot because I didn't think it was working. And I ended up just not sleeping for 2 days. And once I was off of that drug, I felt like I wanted to die for 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks of constant, literally feelings of dread, feeling like I need to die, until the feelings finally stopped. And it wasn't, and even so, for 6 months after taking it only once, I still craved it. I craved it on a regular basis. And if I would have got in contact with that same dealer, I would have totally taken it, and I think I would have totally taken a different path in my lifetime. I feel for people who are on substances trying to get treated, it is hard. Once you become dependent on it, it's, even if you do it once, it is so hard to get rid of that feeling of wanting to do it again. So I totally feel that. And also, you can get depression from substance abuse, but I figured y'all would know that already. So in the end, how do we even treat depression? I've been talking about all these terrible depressions, and oh my god, whatever are we gonna do? And basically there is different kinds of treatments. The most common treatment is psychotherapy. And psychotherapy is drugs, prescription drugs. And basically some of these drugs can be Lexapro, Zoloft. They are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And you're probably like, what does that mean? And what it is, it's basically, it will shut off certain channels and open other ones to pump in more serotonin for you. There is also serotonin and these words, man. Serotonin and norepinephrine. I don't know. I don't know the word. I'm so sorry. I can see the word and I know what it means. I can't actually say it. Norepinephrine. Oh my god. serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. Those are Jesus. Those are more common nowadays. They are a new type of psychoactive drug. They are actually more effective, but they have more side effects. And that is why you'll usually start with a selective serotonin reuptake, because there's barely any side effects. The common side effect is that, it's not working. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have experienced this if you have been taking antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and you take them for about a month and you're like, these do absolutely nothing. That is very common, and do not cut your prescription cold turkey. Like, do not stop cold turkey, because that makes it worse. What you're supposed to do, if you don't think a antidepressant is working for you, go to your doctor or psychologist and say they are not working. There's over 100 different kinds of depression antidepressants, and just because one doesn't work doesn't mean you need to stay on it. And the issue with this is that if people do cut it cold turkey, that is where you start feeling symptoms of depression and hopelessness and wanting to die. And most people go through with it, and it's really sad to see, because we're just psychologists are just trying to help you. They're not trying to pump you with drugs. We're just genuinely trying to help you. But yeah, so with the serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake, inhibitors with those, they have way more side effects. You can get dizzy spells, you can lose your appetite, and you get much more feelings of hopelessness and wanting to die if it is not used correctly. Even if it's used correctly, you can get those symptoms. So that's why it's not as common. You can also do psychotherapy, which is CBT. And that's cognitive behavioral therapy. That is something I've done to try and combat my dependent personality disorder. You can also do it with depression, anxiety, anything. And it's basically where you tell your brain to stop doing that. It is basically the equivalent of, just smile. You're depressed, just smile. That is basically what cognitive behavioral therapy is. But you yourself are trying to tell yourself, yeah, just smile. It's that easy. For me, what I did is I did vision boards. I know that sounds a little, what's that? If you don't know what a vision board is, it's where you take a bunch of photos that inspire you, from the internet or in your own life, and you put it on this big board, and it's supposed to be where are you going to be 10 years from now? Or where do you want to be? And I did that, and it actually helped me a lot to figure out my own self. You can also do cognitive behavior therapy where journaling is one of the things that also helped me. I don't journal anymore. I did for a little bit, but I usually journal more for anxiety related things, which we will talk about next episode, so I won't really get into it with that. But with that being said, going back to selective reuptake inhibitors, both of the drugs play a key role into stabilizing your mood. So regardless if you take any antidepressant, just understand that it is technically just trying to make you happier. You can also try over-the-counter medication. I myself am not really a holistic type of person. I don't really use essential oils. Well, actually, one of the reasons, if you are a holistic person and do use essential oils, something I do want to say, if you have pets, like a dog or a cat, lavender oil, rose oil, gerani oil, I think it is, they can kill them. So if you have a diffuser in your house, it might be affecting your animals, and be careful with that. When I learned that, I stopped diffusing oils. I now burn candles, and yes, candles are also bad for animals, but if you get soy candles, it is perfectly fine. But anyways, back to the over-the-counter. You can get St. John's wort. St. John's wort is a supplement that you can take that is reported to elevate mood and be able to kind of increase serotonin and dopamine levels. But the issue with St. John's wort is that if you take any form of prescription drug, whether if you are on antidepressants or even on birth control, they can counteract them. So if you are on birth control and do not use any other forms of contraceptives, do not take St. John's wort, because it will make your birth control ineffective. The same thing with antidepressants. So only try it if you're not medicated on anything and if you're kind of at a last line. There is also another thing that I actually highly preach, even though I'm not a mushroom user at all. There is such thing called microdosing. It's actually becoming a huge thing in today's world. I think in BC they actually opened up a mushroom coffee shop, and I've been getting ads that mushroom coffee is better than normal coffee. But what it is that if you've ever taken shrooms before, you do know, or if you've heard shrooms, they're basically an hallucinogenic, and they make you trip balls. But it was discovered, and it's actually clinically proven, that if you take 1/4 of the dose, or it's like 1/4, how do I explain this? So if you take 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram to get to trip out, if you take very minuscule, so if it's 1,000 milligrams, you take, I think it's 0.25 milligrams, which is like, I think 2,500 I don't know what it is. Regardless, it's like a sliver of what like the psycho drug is. And if you mix that in like coffee, or if you like just take a pill form, because I know that there's microdosing pills now, it is actually clinically proven that it can rewire your brain in a way. I know that sounds a little technical, but it basically makes you feel happier, because the basis of shrooms and the trippy part of it is that it does go into certain parts of your brain and changes it. That's why you see things and feel things and all that stuff. But I actually tried my fair share of microdosing a little bit last year. I was microdosing for about 3 months, and yeah, I definitely felt a difference. You don't get high. There's nothing like that. You don't feel any different, other than I felt a little happier. You don't take it every day. You take it every 2 to 4 days. You take 1 pill and you go on from there, and it really helped. I'm not saying that it will help for everyone. It's just, when you're at a last resort, I would say try it, as long as you get it from somewhere that actually like sells them. Don't get it from your local drug dealer, because it is hard dosing. Unless you are good at dosing yourself, you can dose a microdose, dose properly. But that is just some of the over-the-counter supplements. I guess it's not really over-the-counter. You can also try lion's mane. Lion's mane is not a psychoactive drug, or not a psychoactive mushroom. It is just a normal mushroom, but apparently it has calming benefits, and I really do want to try the mushroom tea that is getting pushed in my face by ads, because apparently it's better than coffee. But anyways, I digress. Something else that can, another treatment you can do is always diet and exercise. You're probably going to hear me repeat this every single podcast that, in the treatments, is that diet and exercise is one of the best ways to combat any disorder that is like anxiety, depression, etc. And it's because your gut is actually linked to your mind. I will do probably a whole episode on this later, but it is basically saying that your gut biome leads to your emotions. That's why when you're really emotional and want to go for chocolate or ice cream, it's because your gut is like trying to comfort you. So if you treat your gut good and eat good and exercise good, it releases more dopamine and endorphins. Exercising increases endorphins alone, and what endorphins are is basically when you work out, when you get that pump feeling that you're all pumped up and ready to go, that's endorphins. It makes you feel on top of the world, and that is why the release of endorphins can counteract depression. The same with your diet. Eating better foods make you feel better. That's just normal. If you eat a strawberry over a hamburger, like, you're gonna feel better eating the strawberry. Well, actually, for me, I'd emotionally feel better eating the hamburger, but technically you're supposed to eat the strawberry. And yeah, that leads us to the final thing, where it's like, well, do you have it? Like, if you have it, hopefully you can get treatment for it. I really don't like, going back to the previous episode on stigmas and everything, it really sucks that there is a lot of people who are struggling with depression nowadays and don't get help because it's seen as weird. I remember when I was back in school, I got bullied for being depressed. I grade 4, so I was bullied my whole life. It wasn't until grade 10 when the bullying finally stopped. It was more just, high school drama where it's like, oh, she looks provocative today. I don't really think that's bullying. That's more just like, okay, move on with your life. But when I was in grade 4, I was at my lowest. I know, grade 4, being a little 11-year-old at my lowest. Not really. But as a kid, I felt really sad, and I'm pretty sure I did have depression. I would skip school. I wouldn't want to get out of bed. And then the bullying got so bad. I learned about the Butterfly Project in grade 4. If you don't know what the Butterfly Project is, it's if you're a self-harmer, or I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the different colored butterflies mean something different. Like, I'm pretty sure an orange butterfly meant like an eating disorder, a blue butterfly meant like you're depressed, a red one meant self-harm, etc., etc. And so I got into the Butterfly Project because I struggled with a certain mental illness, which I will talk about once we get to that episode. And I would draw the butterflies on my hand, like just like a cute little butterfly on my wrist, in hopes that like it would help, right? But it did not. I ended up getting bullied so bad because I guess other grade 4s know what the Butterfly Project is, and they thought I was weird, a freak. It was so bad. Like, and I remember one of the ways, if you are a self-harmer, because it is linked to depression, I was a self-harmer growing up, and one of the things, this led on to grade 5 and 6. It's actually, now that I think about it, crazy that I was 11 years old and even knew what self-harming was. That's crazy. Bullying is like one of the biggest things, like with environmental stressors. And it's actually, now that I'm like talking about it and thinking of it, it's like, that's why I got depressed. If you don't know, when I was in grade 4, I got my lovely female thing very young, and I got bullied for that because I guess we didn't get taught in grade 4 that a period does not mean pregnant. It actually means you're not pregnant. So as a grade 4 and in grade 5, I got bullied because people thought I was pregnant because I got my period. Like, make it make sense. I don't understand. We need better sex education that doesn't just talk about abstinence. I'm looking at you, religious people. Please, can we get better school education so we can stop bullying for women? But anyways, yeah, so it spiraled, and one of the things that you can do to try and stop self-harming and everything is you can draw on yourself. It said it's better if you do it with a red marker. You're not supposed to do it with pens, only marker, and you draw on yourself to make it, so you don't actually cut yourself. And I used to draw all over my arms. I even did the whole quirky thing all the way up into grade 7 where like you draw all those cute little symbols and you take like very aesthetic photos. But before that, yeah, my drawing on my arms came from self-harming, and people bullied me for it. Like, I don't know, I don't think it's changed in the school system nowadays, but like, why do we get bullied for trying to help ourselves? That's something I've always noticed, is like, why do kids, like, I understand we're kids and we don't understand, but like, we really need to treat our kids or teach our kids better, because this whole anti-bullying thing, it doesn't help. I just feel like it makes bullying worse. But regardless, why was I even on this? Oh, talking about if you have it and stuff. Like, it's hard to really know, especially because when you do get bullied for things that aren't even true, it's very hard to put your emotions into one place, right? Another things that I think help, they're not really said, like they usually, a lot of websites and stuff just say take drugs, you'll be fine. But what I really like doing is find new hobbies. I really got into cooking. Cooking has helped me very much with mental disorders and everything, because it's nice. I got the hiccups. Oh my god. So like find certain hobbies to keep you motivated. Try meditation, try yoga, try hiking, try, I don't know, a hot dog eating contest. You will find something you like. And something that I've noticed, at least learning in psychology in university, is that if you find something that you like doing or something that you want to keep doing, it makes you happier as a whole because it makes it feel like you're doing something with your life. I know a lot of people struggle with, well, why am I even here? I'm just another person. I am just a waste of space. I've heard that so many times in my days of, learning psychology and with friends and stuff. And that's why I always say, find something that you like to do. Be in a competition. If you're not a competitive person, try cooking, try yoga. It's always good if you can say that you're good at least at something. You can even play a video game. Get good at it. Like, as long as you have a purpose, I feel like mental disorders have a harder time trying to, like, take over your life, you know what I mean? If you are Canadian, here in Canada, and I know some states in America, pot is legalized, or marijuana, and I hate to break it to you guys, but long-term use of marijuana can also lead to depression. It can actually make depression symptoms worse, and I know a lot of people are like, what? Like, marijuana can do that? Marijuana just makes me, chill and stuff. Sometimes it gives you anxiety, but how can it lead to depression? Well, marijuana is actually known as a downer in the drug class. And if you don't know the difference between a downer and an upper is where you feel on top of the world and all over the place. Like, cocaine, heroin, etc. And then there's also such thing called as downers, and downers are like marijuana, alcohol, etc. And downers, what they do is, even though you may feel good in the moment, it actually depresses you more. With marijuana, it can actually lead to less dopamine reuptake, because when you do smoke weed, it actually gives you more dopamine. And like I said earlier, if you are taking a drug like melatonin or drugs, the more uptake of that drug will make you less happy or less whatever it is replacing. And so yeah, if you were a long-term marijuana user, you may actually feel depressed, and that is why a lot of people who go from just a social smoker to a heavy smoker, it's because you can't feel happy when you're not smoking. And like I said, the only way to combat that, if you are a heavy smoker and do feel those things, the only way to combat it is to try and withdraw from it. Take less or cut cold turkey. To put it in perspective, I got taught that it takes 46 days to break a habit. After that 46 days, you are good. You are clean. As of right now, I said this in the last episode, I am trying to grow out my fingernails. It is hard. Holy moly, I'm on like day 5 and I just want to just chew them all off, but I'm not going to. But it is said that in 46 days, if you can stay clean for something for 46 days, you will no longer have that craving. Same thing with food and sugar. I remember when I went on a diet with my mom when I was younger. She didn't force me into it. My mom's great. She was just doing her own diet, so I decided to do it. I didn't crave sugar for like a whole, for months. And I thought that fast food was disgusting. So yeah, if you do cut sugar, you won't crave it anymore. If you hear people who eat kale chips instead of regular chips, there is a reason. It's because when I was on this diet, when I ate McDonald's in high school, I remember I was so sick. It tasted like garbage. And it makes me laugh because I love McDonald's. You give me a chicken nuggies, I will marry you on the spot type of thing. But it's funny to think that if you actually cut it out, it tastes disgusting. So it's really interesting, the marketing behind fast food and just how it can taste disgusting, yet we just love it and eat it up. And that's all because of the refined sugars and all of the lovely filler foods they like to put in our food. But yeah, so if you are a marijuana smoker or an alcohol user, just know that if you do become dependent on it and you try and withdraw one day, you are gonna get major depression. I never smoked or did anything like that growing up. I was known as a goody two-shoes. It wasn't until I was 18 till I finally got the Zaza, and now I'm like, wow, I don't know why I didn't like this growing up, but that is not me saying to do it before the age limit, because I will say this: if you drink alcohol or smoke weed or do any kind of drugs before you are 25, your brain will stop where you get dependent. This happened to my dad, and Dad, if you were watching, understand that this is what happened to you. If you take hardcore drugs or even become an alcoholic, let's say 15, you start chronically smoking, chronically drinking, all of that stuff, your brain will stop developing when you are 15. That means even if you do stop and go clean, you will forever have the mentality of a 15-year-old. And yes, you can still grow, you can still develop, but your brain, you won't be able to remember things as much. You might get short-term depression, short-term memory loss. Like, it sucks. And that's why I strongly discourage like drinking or smoking growing up. Of course, I know with high school you go to your parties and you drink and smoke, whatever. But what I'm trying to say, if you become a dependent user, your brain will stop no matter where you take it. If you take it after 25, you may deteriorate your brain. You might get cirrhosis, you might get lung infections. That's fine, but at least your brain is fully developed. I would like to argue that technically the drinking age and legal age, I know drinking age in America is 21, but the drinking age here in Canada is 18. I've heavily argued that we should actually raise the drinking age, but then that comes to the new problem of, well, if you raise the drinking age, there's going to be high schoolers and middle schoolers who will want to drink earlier because they don't want to wait that long. So the argument that the smoking and drinking age here in Canada is 18 and 19, yes, it's better at not making kids drink more, but it really sucks that kids are very influenced and we think that's cool when we're younger. If anything, I'm probably going to do another episode on that. I don't want to talk about that. But yeah, with that being said, it is really tough because I know with substances, it brings a lot of relief to people, but it has more consequences more than anything. But the whole thing with depression and how it's so lightly treated, like I don't think it's taken that seriously. The World Health Organization has estimated that depression will be the highest medical disability, second to HIV and AIDS, by 2030. So it is basically saying that depression is so debilitating that it's on the same level of HIV and AIDS, where you actually die from it and you can't live a long life if you have AIDS. So that's pretty scary if the World Health Organization is predicting that by 2030. Like, oh my gosh, that is literally in 8 years from now. Come on, doctors, teachers, anyone, why can't we do better? That actually blows my mind right now to think about that, because why are we not taking disability seriously? Like, it must be the fact that the whole social structure and how socialism became a thing and just how we are shoving it so under the rug that I think it's going to become this huge problem. And, I'm not a big fan of revolutions, but it seems like the day is coming, or we're all going to be way too depressed to even want to do that. With that being said, I'm going to leave you with the psychology fun fact of the day, and continuing on with breaking habits and how getting into new habits can help with depression. If you want to change a habit, fun, surprise, and a crowd can help you. So first, what you need to do is you need to make it fun. So make it enticing. So if, like, for me, I'm trying to stop biting my nails. So take up a new habit. With addiction and habit, usually you replace one habit or addiction with another. So make it fun and exciting. Like, for me, with my fingernails, I put on different colored nail polish all the time because I think it looks nicer. Make it a surprise as well. A lot of people like to brag on social media or to their friends that they're going on this new diet, or they're going to kick the habit of alcoholism and they're going to start today. Well, more often than not, it always tends to fail. I have seen this way more often than I would want to, with how people will be like, yeah, I'm going on a diet, and then like a month or a week later they're like, just kidding, no more diet. And the reason for that is because when you say that you are going to do something, you are actually less likely going to do it, because you put people under the impression that you're going to do it. So if I say, oh, I'm going to lose weight, People are now going to ask you consistently if you are losing weight or what you are doing, and it actually subconsciously stresses you out, and that is why you lead to more sugary foods or nail biting. You will bite your nails because you're stressed that people's opinion is going to change if you actually don't finish the habit. So if you make it a surprise, don't tell anyone that you're doing a life change. Just do it in the shadows and make it a surprise. The day that you, I don't know, lose 30 pounds or grow out your fingernails or are 100 days sober, then tell people. And people, you yourself will get a dopamine rush, and it is so much better than if you tell people day by day. And the last thing is to use a crowd. With using a crowd, it ties into making it a surprise. If you use the crowd and tell everyone, hey, like I lost 20 pounds or whatever you did, the crowd will probably be very supportive of you, and they will tend to either follow in your footsteps, which people love to feel power. You also get that sense of validation, and everyone loves validation. That's why people use social media. And that is why I am going to tell you to like, subscribe, and comment down below. My links to my social media will be down below. Like me over on Spotify and or Apple. Please rate this 5 stars if you did enjoy it. Like I said, I like validation too, and like I said before, numbers make me happy. Go like and comment if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're watching over on YouTube. Wherever you're watching, please hit a like. Like I said, I really like the numbers. So why not just take a little click on your thumb and rate it 5 stars, or, you know, give me a little like, or comment something nice. I don't know, comment, what did you eat today? I like to know, like, what did you eat? Regardless of that, I hope you did enjoy today's podcast on Just Justine Time. I really hope you learned at least a little something about depression, maybe a little bit about yourself. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, night, morning, whenever you are watching this, and I will see you over in the next episode where we talk about anxiety. So have a great day, you guys.